Hunt is right there with them, and Amy Hunt normally runs a pretty good benching. Oh, Jackson's pulled. Jackson's pulled. It's Kyla White.
August 21st, 2026, Lausanne, Switzerland. The Lausanne Diamond League Athletissima meeting. The women's 200-meter final. Shericka Jackson gets off to a good start and is among the leaders. The second fastest woman in history over the distance. The two-time world 200-meter champion. The five-time Olympic medalist. The athlete who came into this race with a season's best of 21.87 seconds and 2 Diamond League wins already banked in 2026. She holds even with the field through the curve. And then, just as the women turn into the straight, Jackson starts to slow before ultimately stopping mid-race. She pulls up just after coming off the curve and crashes to the track. She is taken off the track in a wheelchair. The race continues without her. American Kayla White wins in 22.18 seconds, ahead of Amy Hunt and Favor Offaly, who finished second and third in a photo finish, both timed at 22.32. And somewhere on the infield of the Stade Olympique de la Pontaise, Shericka Jackson is being wheeled away from the track while the Diamond League final in Brussels sits 13 days ahead on the calendar. Jamaica is holding its breath, and the athletics world, which watched the second fastest woman in history crash to the ground in Switzerland last night, is asking the question it has been circling for 2 years. What is actually happening with Shericka Jackson's body, and how serious is this? Before you can understand what last night in Lausanne actually means, you need to understand the full weight of what Shericka Jackson was carrying when she walked to that start line. This was Jackson's first race since the passing of her longtime coach, Stephen Francis. Stephen Francis, Frano, died on July 4th, 2026, one day after his 64th birthday, after a period of illness that had been confirmed by MVP Track Club only days before his death. Francis was not simply Jackson's coach. He was the architect of her entire professional identity. The man who coached her through a 400-meter bronze medal at Rio 2016, through a 4x100 relay gold at Tokyo 2020, through 2 world 200-meter titles, through a 21.45-second personal best that made her the second fastest woman in history. He built her from a multi-event athlete into the most complete female sprinter on the planet, and Jackson walked to the Lausanne start line 6 weeks after burying him, in her first competitive appearance since his death, carrying grief that no athletics preview or Diamond League standings table can fully account for. Previews for the race described her as returning with an added sense of purpose after Francis's passing, with the season entering its final stretch. That purpose was visible in how she began. Strong start among the leaders, looking like the Jackson who had dominated this distance for 4 years. And then the bend took it away. The day before the race, at the pre-meet press conference in Lausanne, Jackson delivered a statement that deserves to be read in full now that the race has produced what it produced. Mentally, I do not know how good I am at the moment, but I am physically well, and I do not know what to expect, she said. That sentence, I do not know what to expect, from a 2-time world champion who has competed at the highest level of her sport for a decade, is not the kind of uncertainty that arrives without reason. It is the uncertainty of an athlete who has been negotiating with her own body across a long period of managed inconsistency, who knows the gap between what she is capable of on her best day and what her body is currently willing to guarantee, and who is honest enough, in the Francis tradition of blunt, unsparing honesty, to say so publicly. Jackson had raced sparingly this season, gradually building her race calendar following a series of injuries during the 2024 and 2025 seasons. She had competed just once since late June before Lausanne. The warning signs were there in her own words in her own press conference, 24 hours before she pulled up and fell to the track. The sport heard the words, it watched the race anyway, and now it is asking questions it should have been asking before the gun fired. Jackson pulled up on the bend with what appeared to be a hamstring injury. The word appeared as doing significant work in that sentence. No official diagnosis has been confirmed as of this script being written, and the nature and severity of what happened on the Lausanne track last night will only become clear in the days that follow. What is not speculative is the injury history that frames it. Jackson has been managing physical fragility since 2024 in a way that has fundamentally altered how she constructs her competitive season. She races less. She spaces her appearances further apart. She chooses her races carefully rather than building the kind of dense competitive calendar that her rivals use to sharpen their form across a long outdoor season. The only blemish on her 2026 record before Lausanne came at the Eugene Diamond League, where she finished 6th in the women's 100 meters. The pattern of her 2026 season, 2 wins in China in May, 1 appearance in June at the Jamaican Championships, 1 appearance in late August in Lausanne, is not the pattern of an athlete at full capacity. It is the pattern of an athlete being protected from herself, managed through a season by people who understand that the gap between what she is capable of and what her body will currently sustain is narrower than her personal best suggests. Last night in Lausanne, that gap closed entirely. The Diamond League final in Brussels is scheduled for September 4th and 5th, 13 days from last night. Jackson is currently 4th in the women's 200-meter Diamond League standings. A confirmed final spot requires either a sufficient points total or a wildcard selection from the Diamond League organizers. The DNF in Lausanne has not helped her standing and has raised the immediate question of whether she will be physically capable of competing in Brussels, even if the qualification is confirmed. A hamstring injury of any severity, from a minor strain to a significant tear, does not resolve itself in 13 days. The aggressive rehabilitation programs that elite sprint athletes have access to can compress recovery timelines, but they cannot eliminate them. If the injury Jackson suffered on the Lausanne bend is more than superficial, Brussels is in serious jeopardy. And if Brussels is in jeopardy, the 2026 season, a season she was building carefully, deliberately, and with the added emotional weight of Francis's death, ends in a wheelchair on a Swiss infield, rather than on a Brussels podium chasing a 4th diamond trophy. Shericka Jackson is the 3rd major Jamaican women's sprint athlete to suffer a significant public injury event in recent seasons. And the pattern across these 3 cases raises questions about how Jamaica's sprint program manages the physical load on its female athletes that nobody in Jamaican athletics has yet engaged with at the volume the evidence demands. Tia Clayton pulled up at the Jamaican Athletics Championships in June 2025 with tape already visible on her knee, was withdrawn from the NACAC Championships without official explanation, and has not returned to the level of her 10.82 personal best in the 14 months since. Shelly Ann Fraser-Price withdrew from the Paris Olympics with an Achilles injury mid-competition and has not competed at the same level since, eventually splitting with her coach after a difficult 2024 season. And now Shericka Jackson, who had already been managing injury for 2 years, who had expressed public uncertainty about her own physical state the day before the race, who had raced only once since late June, pulls up and falls in Lausanne in her first appearance since her coach's death. Here is the verdict on what happened at the Stade Olympique de la Pontaise last night, stated as directly as the facts allow. Shericka Jackson failed to complete the women's 200-meter at the Lausanne Diamond League Athletissima Lausanne after pulling up just after coming off the curve and crashing to the track. She was taken off in a wheelchair. This was her first race since Stephen Francis died. She had told reporters the day before that she did not know what to expect. She had been managing injury since 2024. She had raced once since late June. The Diamond League final in Brussels is 13 days away. The nature and severity of the injury has not been officially confirmed. And Jamaica, the island that has watched Fraser-Price withdraw from an Olympics, Clayton pull up at a national final, and now Jackson fall on a Swiss track, owes itself and its athletes an honest public conversation about what is happening inside its women's sprint program and what it intends to do about it.